Mark Rogers TV talking to Miami football. We bring on Cam Underwood from State of the U with the Hurricanes on the eve of a ACC Coastal Division matchup at home against 3-1 Georgia Tech. Cam, how's it going?
It's going pretty good. Some big developments since the last time that we talked. I feel remiss if I don't say that, Miami beat Florida State 24-20. Daryl Langham with the game-winning touchdown. Malik Rozier played like terrible in the first half, but made plays when it counts. 3 touchdowns in that second half, including that dime to Langham. Breaking the streak, moving on forward, undefeated, number 11 in the country on the AP, or 10 in the country with the coaches poll. And it's a good time to be a Hurricane, and it feels good to be back there.
Cam, I appreciate you bringing that up. I was going to have to open up the laptop to remember who Miami played last week. It completely went right by me. No, of course you beat Florida State last week. I knew you were going to be on a high. We were going to talk about that, of course. So actually, those are going to be the first 2 questions. I'm going to take you to the highest of highs, considering 24-20. I would think that for a Miami fan, and you can correct me, one of the 2 best ways to end a 7-game slide against Florida State would be just to beat them down 52-0 or rip their heart out at the end of the game when they think they've won it. So we're going to take you to the highs of highs, and then my second question is going to take you maybe not to the low of lows, but going to hit a spot concerning a particular player. So we'll go first with the highs of highs. 7 excruciating losses, a couple blowouts in there, but mostly excruciating, blowing leads. They would throw up the graphic a couple times during the game of how Miami's lost games to Florida State. So take me to the Langham play, and Rozier driving them down the field and just the elation of finally breaking the streak.
I mean, it was a long time coming. It was way overdue. You look in the last 6 years, 5 of those games have been close, with the exception of 2013 when, they won a national championship in Tallahassee, and that team, had 2 transcendent players in Jameis Winston and Dalvin Cook at the same time. And, we've just found ways to lose as opposed to finding ways to win repeatedly. I've been to a lot of the games here in Miami, Miami Gardens at Hard Rock Stadium or Land Shark, Sun Life, whatever you want to call it. And every year it's been, tied, or Miami for the last 3 times, 4 times here have been up going into the fourth quarter in the second half in all those games and found ways to lose. Dalvin Cook beat us personally 3 times. Jameis Winston also, beat us, and those 2 players pretty much by themselves. And, it was Miami dropped the interception before that last touchdown pass to Alden Tate. And that felt like the last 7 years. That felt like we had a chance to make a play. Jaquan Johnson, who's the one who dropped the interception, had a chance to be the hero and didn't. And then they come back. Robert Knowles blew his second coverage. Both touchdown passes were on coverages that he broke or missed. The seam route to Ryan Izzo, who's not good, but whatever. He's their starting tight end, so he scores. And I'll fight you about that. Like they said, Bud Elliott, a good friend of mine over Tomahawk Nation last year, said that David Njoku would not start at Florida State in favor of Ryan Izzo. And I said Ryan Izzo is not the first or second best tight end on either team, because I'm taking Njoku, clearly first-round draft pick, who's scoring acrobatic one-handed diving touchdowns in the NFL at age 21, and Christopher Herndon, Miami's new or other starting tight end, who's now the man. I'm taking both of those guys in front of Izzo. But, of course, my mentions blew up when Izzo scored that touchdown. He scored a touchdown because Robert Knowles blew that coverage. You go in that last drive that Florida State had, and Knowles blows the coverage again. You see D. Delaney pointing and saying, yo, we're doing this. Go get him. And he's crashing down the flat, and all of a sudden you have Alden Tate, their best and biggest wide receiver, wide-ass open. And that it just felt like the last 7 years. It felt like, okay, we had a chance to make that play previously, found a way to snatch defeat from the hands of victory. But, you're missing Mark Walton, who's already out of there. You're missing Sheldrick Redwine, which is why Knowles is playing. And Malik Rozier came out cool, calm, and collected, to the point where there's a GIF on Twitter that another Hurricane fan made. On 3rd and 10, 2 plays before the touchdown play, coming out of a timeout, Malik Rozier, the Florida State crowd, and saying, "Get louder, bro! Like, yeah, scream, go ahead!" And he hits Braxton Berrios on that option route, and it gets out of bounds. That's the one play before. The next play, he drops a dime to Darrell Langham, and I was at a buddy of mine's house, and he has a beautiful, beautiful townhouse up in Wellington. And I know for a fact that the neighbors heard me through the walls. I mean, I was loud on both sides. It was just, it was one of those things. And, jump up and everything. I had to move kind of slowly because my computer was on my lap because, I'm live blogging as we're going. But, man, it was you remember when Steve Young won that first Super Bowl and they mocked on the sideline of taking the Joe Montana monkey off of his back? That's what I felt like, bro. Like, just go and just remove that, because, like you said, there's one, maybe two blowouts in that streak. It was a lot of close games and a blocked extra point and Dalvin Cook in the fourth quarter and like blowing that huge lead in 2014 when we were up by 3 touchdowns and found a way to lose. So that's where I was. It was, if you look back at the State of the U timeline, because I was, running the site Twitter at the time, man, it was a peaks and valleys of emotion, because the good plays were good and the bad plays were terrible, and then it just kind of spiraled. But yeah, no, it feels really good, and it's validation for the program. It's validation for these players, and I'm just tired of hearing all of the nonsense from Florida State fans. But the last time that you won, there wasn't even HD TV, so you can't even see HD highlights, and you guys are fans, and Doak South at Hard Rock Stadium or whatever. Like, we should call it Hard Rock North because Miami Hurricanes have a winning record in Tallahassee if you want to go there. But it doesn't matter. Everything is in the past, and I'm going to turn it around on Florida State fans just the way that they did to us and said, all of your past championships and any past interactions don't matter. Talk about the game this year. The game this year that happened, Miami won 24-20, undefeated, moving on, and it was a pretty awesome feeling. So that's where I am.
Which is going to bring me to a topic sometime in the off season, because fans get into debates about historical references and what really matters and exactly what you're pinpointing right there. But it's a good May conversation in regards to what's important. Is 1925 important, or when do those games and the trash talking really start, and when is it relevant? But that's a good off season discussion right there. So before I take you to the low, and you already referenced Mark Walton, Malik Rozier, and I'm going to get the correct pronunciation on his last name here. I was trying to take your lead a few weeks ago. Rozier, correct?
That's what he said, but my full name is Cameron, but people call Cameron and Cam. So it's basically, as long as you're in the ballpark, his head's going to snap. So Rozier or Rozier, it doesn't really matter to him. So whichever one works.
Okay, because it's so much easier to go with Rozier, because that's everything, from Mike Rozier on that I've ever seen. When I've seen that name, that comes out of my mouth. So I have been so locked in and focused to say Rozier over the last several weeks. But, you can't look at the stat sheet. Well, maybe you can. First half versus second half. 19 for 44, 254, something like that off the top of my head. I haven't looked at it for about a week. But the last drive or two, and especially the last drive, can you talk about how we may have seen a quarterback grow up, develop right in front of our eyes?
I think it's even more than just a drive. It's basically by half, he's had a completely disparate performance. First half, Malik is the one we saw, Bethune-Cookman, Toledo, and Florida State, has simply just not been good. To the point where, yes, I have called for N'Kosi Perry, the other quarterback, because I'm looking for something to be different. Because 4 for 16 for 34 yards or whatever it was in the first half against Florida State, that's unsustainable. You can't win like that, period. And we're down 3-0. So, and by Mark Richt not changing play calls, by not doing anything different, by not looking at those things that Malik Rozier or Rozier, whatever, does well, quarterback number 12 for Miami. If you're not looking at that scheme, you're not changing things, then something has to change. And for me, that's going to be the player who's playing. And coming out of halftime, the player who's playing has changed. And it's been Malik Rozier as a second half guy. And if you look at any of those games, well, with the exception of the Duke game, because he got off to a fast start, scored in the first 2 drives, and then there was a lull for a while, and then he came back in the fourth quarter. So it was really, first quarter, fourth quarter, that one game. But otherwise, it's been a clear line of demarcation. First half, Malik is average at absolute, glass half full best, versus Second half, Malik, who comes out and is dealing. I mean, those throws, that throw up the sideline to Amon Richards on 3rd and 20 in that cover 2 hole, the play before Richards baptized A.J. Westbrook, that throw is an NFL throw. And in the first half, I don't know where that ball goes. He probably throws it directly at the cornerback or right to the safety, sails a guy, and throws an interception. But when he's in rhythm and on time and just feeling it, man, this kid is good. And I know people are like, yeah, Cam, like whatever. You're still calling for N'Kosi Perry because you like him better than Rozier. I do, true. But I want to ride with Rozier if we're winning. But he's not giving me that kind of performance. So it's really, first half has been terrible for him. Second half has been amazing. So I don't know what it is about halftime, either the adjustments or the change of play calls or him settling himself, focusing, listening to I don't know what's going on. But, yeah, it's not just one drive. Because if you look at that throw to Richards, if you look at that touchdown to Berrios, either touchdown to Berrios, the first one on the smash concept, outside curl, inside kind of corner, but they kind of ran a fade, that was a dime. If you look, they threw a fade to Berrios, who's 5'9", from the 7-yard line. And he put it on a dime to the back of the end zone, tap, tap, knee down, touchdown. Time for that throw. And to get it perfectly, dealing. Amon Richards there. Berrios on that wiggle route on the last drive. You have Amon Richards on square in earlier. Both of those throws on the last drive to Herndon. And I'm going through and I'm counting all of these throws that I remember being great in the second half. But he's not doing that in the first half, and I have no idea why. But I would love to see that in the first half from him. So it's weird. I don't think that he grew up then, but he continued what he had been doing in that second half. And yeah, again, I don't know what the difference is between first half and second half, but first half Malik has been bad. Second half Malik has been, I won't say first team All-ACC, but maybe second or third team. But yeah, I would like to see the consistency from him because, and it's things that I've said before in other situations, if you have this level of performance once, now I expect that from you because now I know that you have that ability in you. So I don't want to see 4 for 16 in the first half of 44 yards or whatever. I don't want to see that. Why? Because you did that second half. Yeah, he went barely over 50% passing in the second half because he missed a couple throws still. But you're making dimes like touchdown, 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 Richards up the sideline, square in, wiggle route, Herndon. If you're making all these throws, I need you to make these throws consistently and not miss them. And that's what I want to see from him. But when he's on fire, Malik Rozier is playing really, really well, and hopefully that continues.
They need to get him out there on 7-on-7 drills about 2 hours before kickoff and just work him out there for about 25 passes.
It could be that, or other players, even quarterbacks, have said, look, I want to get hit once, and then that wakes me up. Deshaun Watson said that. Andrew Luck said that. A couple other guys, say, look, let me run zone read and get popped one good time, and then I'm good. And maybe that get into the flow of the game. But, yeah, I would like to see him get into that flow earlier and also maybe the offense work at a higher efficiency rate. But, yeah, when he's good, and we need to see more good Malik, second half Malik, than first half kind of performance.
Miami hosts Georgia Tech on Saturday. The Canes looking to go to 5-0. Georgia Tech comes in at 3-1. They're 1-0 in the ACC, and of course Miami perfect in the Coastal Division. Talking to Cam Underwood of State of the U to help set up the action. We talked about the highs of defeating Florida State, getting the monkey off the back a la Steve Young. Cam, the low of lows. So whether it's you or the other 25 or 30 bloggers and broadcasters I talk to on a fairly regular basis, so we go through the injury report. Once the season starts, especially you get 2 or 3 weeks deep, everybody's got injuries, and we run through the injuries. It's just kind of different with you because I don't know of anybody else. Well, I can clearly state there is no one else that I talk to that takes the pride in the football program and the university as a whole as you do. You don't speak negatively about any player, even if they're underperforming, as long as they're giving a solid effort. You give a solid and honest critique, but you speak of all them as in the family. And Mark Walton would be near the top of that list, I'm guessing, just based on our conversations many times about Mark Walton. I know that you really enjoy the young man. His play on the field and what he has brought to the university. So it's got to kind of hurt that he is missing this final season.
Yeah, and like I will say that I'm critical of performance of players, even some that have been bad, just athletically, but I don't hate them as people. And some of the Hurricanes fans are watching this. If you think about some of the safeties who have played in the recent past who have not been good, I wish them well as people, but as athletes in our athletic programs, maybe not the kind of performance that we want to see. But for Mark Walton, yeah, he was when we did videos before the season and even on the website, I said that he was the most indispensable player on this team just because the depth at running back is slim to none behind him. And yeah, it hurts. He broke his leg in the fourth quarter of the Florida State game. On the same play, freshman starting guard Navon Donaldson sprained his ankle, and he's going to miss this week as well. So there's some other injuries that we can get to after Mark Walton. But yeah, losing Walton for the year is huge, just plain and simple. The focal point of the offense, Mark Richt offense wants to run the ball like you saw at Florida State. Even if it was not being successful, that's what a Richt offense wants to do. And Mark Walton was the best running back in the ACC. He was a top 10 running back in America, and he could do it all. He could block, he could run, he could catch. And I know people are going to look at his stats against good teams, but, when the offensive line is getting dominated by Florida State's defensive line, which is what happened, and credit to Florida State because they have an amazing defensive line, that's not going to leave room for him to run. And you could see early, even they put a clip on the broadcast before the game, pregame, Mark Walton was doing agility drills, and he's cutting off his right foot. Oh, it's sweet. He goes to cut off his left foot, nothing like the smoothness of the right. Now, the thing is, he broke his right leg, or the tibia fibula, like on his leg, of the right leg. So he injured his good leg in the tackle where he got wrapped up, not the one that had previously been gimpy. Either way, that takes away just the center focal point of the offense from the Hurricanes. And, you want to see – I wish all the players well, obviously, but especially Mark Walton. He's been through a lot, man. His mother passed recently. Obviously, something that, when you lose family members that people have to deal with, and that's something that, obviously, he's had to struggle with. He was accused of sexual assault. Erroneously, by the way, 2 summers ago. Long story short, there was a police officer who was basically jealous of Mark Walton and then railroaded him into this false accusation thing. He basically entrapped Walton, allegedly. I don't know if entrapping was the word, but it came to pass that at the behest of the officer, through the young lady, Mark Walton went to her house like late at night because, she was texting him, but it was all the officer, and then he gets pulled over, and it's all this, this whole thing 2 summers ago. And that's terrible, like this, it really is. So he's dealt with that, losing parent, and all kinds of things like that. And, you really wish him well, and he's doing well. He's playing very strongly this season. Obviously started off very well, playing for an undefeated team, finally, leading this team to victories as he has. And losing him is going to hurt. Obviously the depth at running back is, it's very thin. To the point, Travis Homer, your backup running back, is now the starting running back, number 24. He's a true sophomore from West Palm Beach, Florida, Oxford Academy. And both Walton and Homer were playing kick coverage units because they're a team. It's like that Virginia Tech model from the 90s and 2000s. You put your best players, your starters, on special teams. Now Miami has to ramp back on Travis Homer playing special teams because he's the franchise now. He's the starting running back. And it's going to be like that. So you have that going on. You have Trayon Gray coming back off of a knee injury towards ACL last year. He's your backup, or a backup. Robert Burns, who was a 4-star recruit, he's probably not going to be healthy enough to play this year because he's not even listed in the 4 players who were getting reps at that position this week in practice. Crispian Atkins is a new name for a lot of people, but he was a walk-on up until like Sunday, and he got put on scholarship. And he's now a scholarship running back because we only had 3 before that. Now we have 4, and actually 5 because DJ Dallas, who was an athlete in high school, i.e. he played many positions, quarterback, running back, wide receiver, kick returner, punt returner, and defensive back. He was at wide receiver earlier this season and even kick return and whatnot, but they moved DJ Dallas back to running back. And he played that kind of not option quarterback, but he did a lot of zone read stuff, a lot of option stuff in addition to throwing. And if you watch his highlight tape, his change of direction was really elite level. So I could see how that could translate into him playing running back full time. So you take a guy from wide receiver, you put him in running back. You take a guy, a walk-on, and put him on scholarship. you got a guy coming back off of a knee injury, and then you got a sophomore who's never started before. Even though Travis Homer has great skills, he had a bunch of 80 and 90-yard touchdowns in high school. Kid can run. He's, you've seen him make tackles on special teams. He's 5'11", 195 pounds. He's chiseled. So, and he runs bigger than his size. If you've seen, the backup running back come in these games, he's lowering the boom to guys. He's running over people. So he has a amount of athleticism and physicality that you want to see. But, those are the four guys at running back now, absent of Mark Walton. So I think that the talent level is comparable, especially by bringing DJ Dallas from wide receiver to running back. But it's going to be interesting to see how, or if the offense, is different with Travis Homer as your number one back versus Mark Walton. And for me, it's really not at the starting level, Homer versus Walton. I think those can be comparable-ish. I think it's when the depth comes in, because I could trust Travis Homer as the number 2 running back, spelling Mark Walton for a series or a play. Now, if Homer goes out, I don't know. I hope that Trayon Gray is physically ready. He gets his pad level down. He's able to use his explosive speed at 6'2", 235, being arguably one of the fastest players on this team. Crispin Atkins, I've never seen him in game action, but he's a scholarship running back now, so maybe he makes some plays. DJ Dallas, he's a true freshman, moving positions. I don't know how much he's going to be able to contribute. So if Travis Homer has to come out of the game, and running backs will have to come out of the game for whatever reason, gets dinged up, helmet comes off, just needs a breather, something, I'm interested to see how the rest of the backs are able to play. And not just running the ball. You got to catch the ball. You got to pass protect, which Travis Homer is very good at. There's a lot of things that go into that position, and those guys are going to be thrown into the fire. So, it's a sad day, obviously, with Mark Walton missing the rest of the season with an injury, and we wish him the best in his recovery. We want to see, obviously, hopefully, these backup running backs step up to the task when it's their time.
Time to talk Miami football, with the Canes getting set for Georgia Tech on Saturday, 3:30 Eastern time game in Miami. Georgia Tech at 3-1, Miami at 5-0. So the Walton injury is the headliner. But I saw a list of about 3 other players that are key starting this weekend, and they're not on the field. Can you talk about the depth at those spots?
Yeah, so I mentioned that previously. Navon Donaldson, true freshman, like 6'6", 355, starting right guard, he's out. Like I said, he sprained an ankle on the same play that Mark Walton broke his leg, so they were both down at the same time. He's in a walking boot. He has not practiced. He's listed as out officially on the injury report. You're going to have probably Corey Gaynor, who's another true freshman, step in at that right guard spot. He's from Navon Donaldson, went to Miami Central High School. Corey Gaynor went to Marjorie Stoneman Douglas up in Parkland. He was a Minnesota commit for the longest time until Miami came calling. He plays with a mean streak, and we're going to need to see that. Hopefully, bear itself to be, true on the field in college. He's played a lot of fullback. You've seen that heavy set with 65 in the backfield. You're going to take him out of the backfield, put him at right guard, I think. So that's what's going to happen. And you might see a little bit of rotation at that spot as well, depending on how he plays this game. Apart from that, there's half of the starting secondary not going to play this week. You have Sheldrick Redwine, who I think had a concussion or concussion-like symptoms from that Florida State game. That's your starting free safety. Again, was replaced by Robert Knowles, who had those coverage busts for those touchdowns for Florida State. So Redwine is out. And then starting cornerback, D. Delaney, the transfer from the Citadel, fifth-year senior grad transfer, he, too, is out for this ballgame. So you're missing a starting cornerback and you're missing a starting safety from the secondary as we move into Georgia Tech week. Now, I know people are going to say, look, Georgia Tech does not throw the ball a lot. So it doesn't matter that you're missing those guys. It matters because Georgia Tech is explosive when they throw the ball. They have a high yards per attempt. So that means that they're using play action and getting down the field. So when you need to cover well. And those players in the secondary have to come up and they have to support the run. They have to tackle. They have to get guys on the ground. And Redwine and Delaney have been 2 of the most sure tacklers on the back end of this defense. So you're going to have, toss plays to the edge. You're going to have speed option, triple option. You're going to have all kinds of flex bone variations of options and counters and things. You're going to have defensive linemen and linebackers getting cut blocks, so they might be on the ground. That means those secondary players are now integral run players. to tackle really, really, really becomes impactful. So missing those guys, even though, yeah, not in necessarily all of the time a coverage interaction, that is going to matter. So stepping up guys like Trajan Bandy and Michael Jackson at cornerback. Jackson can also play safety. Robert Knowles, he's going to get a lot of burn at safety. Maybe your freshman Amari Carter is going to get some snaps in base defense at safety. So, I mean, we're going to dig into a little bit of the depth and touch into that 2017 recruiting class, because a lot of those guys were brought into play. Amari Carter has played in every game this year on special teams and, late in games on defense. Trajan Bandy has played every game this year. So, those guys are going to have to step up. So whether it's, and, I named 3 freshmen to replace the 3 starters who are out, that being Gaynor on the offensive line, Bandy, and Carter potentially, at least for some snaps, in the secondary. So, those are going to matter. Those guys are out. Anthony Moten should be all the way back. He was held out of the Florida State game after tweaking a knee a couple of weeks ago. And then Amon Richards, the last part of the injury report, he's questionable for this game with a hamstring that's been bothering him pretty much all season. So either you'll see Amon Richards maybe on a snap count or limited, when he's on the field, even though, when he's out there, he's one of the top, I don't know number, but he's one of the top wide receivers in America, bar none. And I'll fight you about that one too. So when 82 is out there, he's going to do a great job, I think. But yeah, he's questionable, and he's been dealing with that hamstring. Some people are saying hold him out for this game. It would be easier if, Miami got a touchdown, an interception return for a touchdown, then a fumble and a quick touchdown in the first quarter, and we're up 21-0 and able to sit on the ball a little bit to leave him out. But yeah, those are the injuries that Miami's facing. So, I know that this team is not operating at 100% health after the Florida State game. And I would be remiss to say that Florida State, or to leave out that Florida State is also injured. They're missing several players, Keith Gavin, one of their starting wide receivers, and a couple other guys who are not playing this week in their game based upon the injuries they sustained against Miami. So it's not necessarily that Miami just got beat up by Florida State and they're missing guys. It was a two-way street. Now, Miami is missing maybe more impactful guys, obviously with Mark Walton being done for the year now. I think one of their offensive linemen, Landon Dickerson, he hurt his ankle in the Miami game, and he for Florida State, and he's out for the year now as well. So, each team loses one player and has multiple other players who are missing this week's game. So, there are a little bit of injury attrition, and I know that Georgia Tech is mostly healthy because they're coming off of a bye week, and obviously don't have any major injuries to talk about. So, Miami's depth is going to be tested a little bit, and, I'm interested to see these guys who are going to be pressing the action, how they are able to step up and make plays.
To your point about the Georgia Tech passing game, Darren Waller is a player that, if we go back to 2014, that's a season Georgia Tech won the Coastal, played within 2 points of Florida State in the ACC championship game, and then won the Orange Bowl emphatically over Mississippi State and finished in the top 10 in the nation. They had Darren Waller, they had DeAndre Smelter. Those names are on the tip of my tongue. I looked them up. Yeah, they were both around 22 yards per catch. Ricky June has been the main guy over the last 3 seasons, so he's a seasoned veteran. Yeah, he's not catching 75 passes because that's not the offense they run. He's got 10 receptions this year. He's generally caught 25 to 30 over the course of a season, but he's gaining 22 and 24 yards a catch his first 2 years. This year it's about 17. So yeah, they want to throw it about 15 to 18 times, but they want to hit it over the top, and they really go for the jugular on big plays.
Yeah, and they're able to do that because they run the ball so well. They're averaging almost 400 yards a game rushing, or is it 300? Whichever one, it's a lot of yards. It might be the 400. I think they're 396 yards per game on the ground. So, when you have play action off of that, you have to run downhill because they're going to run so well and be so productive there. You have to run downhill. Now, all of a sudden, he pulls that ball, throws it deep. You have a one-on-one kind of situation. And Ricky June at 6'3", that's going to be an interesting kind of interaction for Miami on defense because D. Delaney's 6'1", and he's your big corner. Now he's out. So now you're talking about Malik Young, who's been really, really good, but he's only 5'9". Is he going to be able to handle a bunch of jump balls and things like that on defense? We'll see. But yeah, Georgia Tech, the thing is not that they're going to throw it like Baylor used to or like Syracuse is or things like that. They're going to throw it when they want to for them, hopefully, and then, hit those big plays when they're available.
I love this stat in today's football. Taquan Johnson, their starting quarterback. So Justin Thomas was the 3-year starter, led them to that Orange Bowl win and pretty successful seasons, 9-4 last year. He's gone. Taquan Johnson, a little less regarded, less of an athlete, but doing a really nice job. 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. He's thrown 33 passes in 4 games. 8 passes a game. You can look at the game log. He has yet to throw 10 passes in a game. It's pretty remarkable. I saw them play Tennessee. That was opening night, Labor Day night. There was no reason that they walked off the field with a loss. It was ridiculous. They ran for, I don't know what the numbers are. It might have been 500 yards. They could not be stopped. And Tennessee's a lousy rush defense, but they're still SEC athletes. And Georgia Tech made them look silly. They missed 2 or 3 field goals. They fumbled the ball continuously, driving the ball 80, 90 yards down the field with at will. And they had a 2-score lead, and they fumbled going in to make it another touchdown. And then Tennessee scored on a wild play and took it to overtime, and they really dropped a game that they should have won, or they'd be 4-0. But pretty good football team in Georgia Tech coming to Miami on Saturday.
Yeah, and I just looked it up while you were talking. Georgia Tech ran for 535 in that game against Tennessee, and they've had 2 400-yard games. No, I'm right. Yeah, it's 1584 in 4 games, which I believe comes out to 396 for the season. So almost 400 yards a game rushing. Yeah, Mark Richt teams have been good against Georgia Tech in the past. Miami has been successful against Georgia Tech, even with Al Golden, which is one of the very few positive Al Golden stats you'll ever hear me say, because there weren't many of them to say. But it's a thing where you're going to have scheme versus talent, because Miami has better talent across the board. Period. Like, I'm not sorry to say that. I mean, just look it up. If you have eyes in your head and a brain that works, like, dude, Miami has better athletes on both sides of the ball. It's that scheme on offense that is the great, it's the equalizer of life. So, you can't cheat on defense. You can't think, okay, I know this play, so I'm going to run here, because that's when they have that option, or they take the other option, reverse counter, whatever you want to say off of that. Now you think they're going to do this, and then they do that, and all of a sudden it's a touchdown. And that can be in a run game or a pass game. So, I think that this is a formidable opponent to some extent. I've said it before. I respect all opponents, but I fear none. And Georgia Tech also has to deal with Miami, because they've not played a team of Miami's caliber. They've not played a team with Miami caliber athletes on defense. That's Tennessee inclusive. Hi, Volunteer fans, how are you doing? But Miami has to bring it. This is a spot where they have to let that talent show, and they have to be very disciplined with their assignments. I wrote it this week. Another one of our contributors, Stephon Adams, he wrote it today. Basically, getting over the Florida State hump is huge for Miami, because that has been a thing. After losing to them in the last 7 years, Miami's had a 44% win percentage, i.e. 2 out of 5, basically. It's been very poor, the record after that. Even in starting seasons undefeated or with only 1 loss, the wheels come off, or had come off. Now you beat Florida State, and you're in a good position of, how do you deal with success? And it's actions over words. So this is not a trap game, because you had to circle the day that you're playing Georgia Tech as soon as the schedule comes out. And Miami knows that they're going to play Georgia Tech every single season, being in the same division. This is not a trap. This could be a letdown game, though, where you're riding an emotional high. You're not necessarily 100% invested because you put so much into the Florida State game, because both Miami and Florida State play harder and play better against each other than they do in pretty much any other game, because it matters. So now you expended all that emotional energy along with the physical exertion as well. Now you have to rally and continue to bring it and be sound on their assignments, athleticism, and talent, assignment, alignment, technique, to beat Georgia Tech. And this is a game where, it's the one time a year that you're going to play Flexbone. It's a unique kind of challenge, and it comes at a weird time for Miami. I'm not going to say that Miami's going to lose, but they do really need to be focused and bring their best effort. And it's interesting, because you go from Florida State, who's one of the more talented teams in America, bar none. I could probably name Alabama's more talented than Florida State. Clemson, maybe, debatable. And I don't know that there's anybody else who has more talent or is in the conversation as a Florida State. But they're going to play pro style on both sides of the ball, and they're going to line up and probably do well. So you're going from them to this flex bone that I hate, and they have an offensive guard on every play who moves early and is never called for a false start, but whatever. And then next week, Miami plays Syracuse, who runs that Baylor spread, throw it all over the yard. They're going to go 4 wide. They already hit Clemson as I'm watching the game now. They had a blown coverage against Clemson. They hit them 60 yards up the middle of the field, and there's nobody around the receiver. And it's a very different interaction because now you got to be able to cover every single play as opposed to reading your keys going downhill and knowing your assignments on the option in the flex bone this week. So you went from pro style, one of the most talented teams in America, a less talented team with a really ridiculous scheme, in ridiculous, and I mean that as in a good way, because that scheme is the thing that you have to defeat from Georgia Tech. And then you're going from Georgia Tech's scheme, which is disparate from anybody but Navy, over to Syracuse next week with its own scheme that is just chuck it all over the yard that Bowling Green ran when Dino Babers was there. You know, you're talking about that. You're talking about the Baylor kind of spread. It's its own challenge, and being able to switch those things really matters. So Miami's in the middle of that whole interaction of switching defenses or, you know, keys and things, because you're only going to play this defense against a flex bone one time a year. And they really have to bring it. So we'll see if they can.
You started that dissertation talking about talent, and that can be measured in recruiting rankings, which for one particular player or group of 5 or whatever, it doesn't mean a whole lot. But over the course of volumes of players and years, they do mean a whole bunch. And all you have to do is look at the national rankings and the records and then match them up with the recruiting rankings. So Georgia Tech, they're almost like the Wisconsin, Michigan State of the Big Ten, or the Stanford of the Pac-12. Take out the service academies. I put them in a certain place out of respect for what they do and the limitations that they have, because the focus is elsewhere. Georgia Tech runs this ridiculous offense in a good way, but they take recruiting classes that are ranked. It's almost like they don't care. They are looking for, really, everybody's looking for their kind of player and a fit, but they're really looking for a fit. So their recruiting rankings are usually 50, 55, 60. They don't care. And they still produce, not great teams. They're not competing for championships. They're usually not in the hunt, even in the ACC, but they're still winning 8, 9 ball games a year, and they're really good teams.
Yeah, you have the added recruiting hurdle of Georgia Institute of Technology having very high academic standards. So you're not going to be able to get every single high school player who's graduating with a 2.1, grade point average that you might be able to get into other. Well, Miami's not going to get those guys either, actually, now that I mention it. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting kind of a thing. They're looking for guys at Georgia Tech who do a couple of things really well at each position group. They're not going to get, like the Calvin Johnsons of the world. That's the extreme outlier. Demarius Thomas. Well, that's 2. Okay, cool. But other than that, you're going to get some guys on defense. Philip Wheeler is still in the league. He played safety. He's still at Green Bay, I want to say. You have guys who are going to go there and play defense and everything, because you're just running around and hitting people. But on offense, yeah, you're going to have the scheme that you're running is going to be an artificial ceiling for talent, because everybody's not going to go there to play in that system. But yeah, if they're disciplined, they're smart, so they know what they're doing. They can read the keys. They can do all the different alterations to the plays as they go along for the, misdirection and the counter and the counter to the counter and the counter to the counter to the counter and the play action off of one of those and all kinds of things like that. So yeah, Miami does have better talent, but like I said, the scheme, especially on offense, can mitigate some of that against Miami's defense. Now, last year, Miami was able to get upfield a little bit. They had 2 fumble returns for touchdowns on back-to-back plays by freshman Shaq Quarterman and Joe Jackson at the time, who are now sophomores starting. So, there are plays when Miami can assert their physical and athletic dominance, and the Hurricanes will need to do that in every available opportunity and hopefully force Georgia Tech into making some mistakes. Now, Taquan Marshall, their quarterback, has not been making any mistakes. As I asked in our question and answer with the Georgia Tech blog from the Rumble seat, their writer who was giving the answers said he's basically been a virtuoso running their flexbone offense. And that's a great thing. But like I said, he's not played against the Miami caliber defense yet. And that also lets me think that there has to be a regression at some point, because I don't believe that Taquan Marshall is going to sustain this level of play for the entire season, which means he has to come down sometime. That immaculate performance, that perfect game or perfect season that he's having is not going to stay like that. And I would love it if this week was the time that we saw him regress a little bit. I would be perfectly fine with that. So if you want to fumble the ball a couple times, maybe force an interception on a play action pass, you have my blessing, sir.
Well, we can credit him with playing. It's probably not a perfect season, but I think people understand what we're talking about. A perfect season, probably not with the adversity, but with not making unforced errors. But I would think that the Miami defense is going to force some errors in this game. Georgia Tech, Miami, you can hear why you need to catch a State of the U with Cam Underwood and the rest of the staff covering Miami football each and every day. Miami, Georgia Tech should be a good one from South Florida. All right, Cam, we always appreciate the breakdown and knocking things out for us.
Appreciate it, and I'm just going to throw on a little prediction. I think that Miami wins. I think in my article or answering questions from the Rumble Seed, I said something like 31-20. I think that maybe we see a little bit of first half Malik a little bit. I think that Georgia Tech can hold the ball, especially early before Miami makes adjustments. I think that even going into the half, Miami might trail, but I think that second half adjustments or halftime adjustments have been one of the strengths of the staff this season, and even going back to last season. I think those second half adjustments take hold, and then Miami's talent plays out. They're able to put together a couple scoring drives, and then maybe get a turnover and a late score to really push that lead out. So I do think that they cover the spread. I think it's going to be a close game all the way through. I think the spread is like 6.5 on the game. So yeah, I think that it's going to be really tight. I think Georgia Tech might even lead at the half, but I think Miami comes back and ends up winning by about 10.
I'm going to let that rest right there. All right, very good, man.